I'm Danforth Prince. I'm president of Blood Moon Productions, and thank you very much for your time with this video. It's an exciting month for Blood Moon. We are in the unexpected position of releasing two hot biographies. One of them is Darwin Porter's biography of Paul Newman, and the other is Darwin Porter's biography of Michael Jackson, which we'll be talking about on this video. Prompted by the death of Michael Jackson, we have prepared a new edition of an existing biography which we had published in 2007 and which was certainly around during Michael's lifetime and much discussed, we believe, by his camp. And so, in other words, we've added new material alluding to the events leading up to his death and the events swirling around the settlement of his estate. And we've done this within about a month, I believe, of the tragic death of Michael. This biography was written by a seasoned biographer, Darwin Porter, who took his time with this. He researched the subject over a period of many, many years. And he produced a meticulously researched biography, which was done in a cadenced, normal, non-hysterical way. Now, it was also released during the absolute nadir of the life of Michael Jackson, which is why I think it's such an interesting book. It really does record a cadenced overview, cradle to grave, of the life of America's King of Pop. There are a lot of avenues pursued in this particular biography. One of them is an insight into one of the most dysfunctional families in America. To the Jackson saga comes some of the most venomous sibling rivalry since the Old Testament tale of Cain and Abel. The allegations of child abuse inflicted upon Michael by his musical handlers have already been aired on primetime TV. There's a long look at a lawsuit in this book wherein Katherine Jackson physically just beats the shit out of a pretender for the affections of her husband Joe. And that's sort of an interesting insight into the family, among many, many other insights, many, many other anecdotes in the book. And there's even a rumor, which is examined closely by the author, that Michael Jackson, as a preteen, was pimped out to prominent pedophiles in the music industry as a means of promoting the Jackson 5. Now, the author, Darwin Porter, has always been fascinated by fame and its price, as shown by his earlier biographies of subjects who have included Paul Newman, Merv Griffin, Marlon Brando, Howard Hughes, Katharine Hepburn, Humphrey Bogart, and coming in December, Steve McQueen. He's also an almost obsessive chronicler of the hushed-up tales of Hollywood's golden age, as shown by Blood Moon's Hollywood Babylon series. And like some of Darwin Porter's other biographies, this biography of Michael Jackson earned favorable reviews and at least 2 literary awards. Now, although Michael is certainly fascinating as a standalone subject, this book amplifies the Michael saga with insights into how other A-list players reacted to Michael during the various periods of his rise and fall from grace. There's a story about Michael Jackson and the White House that I find rather charming, the way Darwin has recited it. Well, the story involved how Michael came to the White House as if he were an arriving potentate, a representative of an important nation. And to corroborate that, he had 3 cars, had a huge gaggle of entourage, and then a dance began, a minuet began with Nancy Reagan over how the day would go. And evidently Michael fooled the planners by immediately saying, "Where are the children?" And they said, "No, there are just adults here, Michael." And Michael said, I want children present." And he then, according to the sources, locked himself in a bathroom, and Nancy had to talk through the bathroom door to get Michael to come out and perform for his anti-drug program. And then the day ended dysfunctionally. And that's a tale about Michael in Washington. But there are many tales also about his time in Hollywood. It was interesting that both Liza Minnelli and Jane Fonda befriended Michael during his rise, and were photographed with him very frequently. And in the long run, I think Liza proved to be the more enduring friend because she gave a particularly moving testimonial in a speech after his death. And Michael's relationship with Diana Ross is almost Oedipal. He wanted to look like her, he wanted to sing like her. He even instructed his staff at Neverland to refer to him for a while as Miss Ross. And he sometimes cross-dressed to resemble her. Even crusty old Katharine Hepburn, who was nobody's fool when she was, I think, in her late 80s at least. She was ultimately cynical about absolutely everyone by that period of her life, yet she became absolutely fascinated by Michael Jackson, went to one of Michael's concerts, talked about him to all her friends, and then, like many other Hollywood players, she sort of dumped him when he became associated with pedophilia. There's even some evidence that Elizabeth Taylor discussed marrying Michael for a very, very, very brief period and moment. And one sort of wonders after reading the book whether at least some of her famous friendship for Michael might not have been founded on the fact that he provided her with some extremely expensive gifts and really rose and brought her name back into prominence, which was not bad for an actress who hadn't made a movie in a while. And that indeed is a complicated relationship that Michael had, to which his mother Catherine strenuously objected. And I think she said, as revealed by Darwin Porter, that, Michael, you already have a mother and you don't need Elizabeth Taylor. And then there are Michael's complicated and usually competitive relationships with other divas, some of them friends, some of them enemies. And you sort of get the sense of when titans clash. They include Marlon Brando, Prince, Mick Jagger, Madonna, Paul McCartney, the lovely Mae West, the lovely Liberace, Sammy Davis Jr., Jacques Chirac, the president of France at the time, David Geffen, Quincy Jones, and even Fred Astaire. And all of them eventually issued statements of various degrees of either cattiness or tribute to the press. I think what was said to vilify Michael Jackson, just in terms of studying media of an era and looking at what it can get away with, the precedent set by the campaign about Michael Jackson set new standards in Venom, an American moment probably. And although the book offers a very fair and unbiased overview of the life of Michael Jackson, it does not retreat from discussing some particularly tricky issues. It looks at his fetishes. For example, they include why he was trying to buy the body parts of dead and still living celebrities. It's very, very weird. Evidently he wanted to include the bones of Marilyn Monroe, the gallbladder, I think, of Pope John Paul II, and the bones of John Merrick, who was the Elephant Man to Victorian England. And he even planted somebody's preserved brain on a shelf somewhere in his house, probably, I think, his bedroom, just as something to think over, a symbol into a greater realm of consciousness, I don't know. There's an anecdote in the book about Jacqueline Onassis and why Mrs. Kennedy dumped Michael. Evidently, Truman Capote paid a visit to Michael Jackson in an apartment Michael was living in at the time in New York City, and Truman Capote saw a wall covered with posters of young John John without a shirt on, all over the place, fetishistic, whatever. And Truman, as was his way, rushed back and told Jacqueline Onassis that Michael had developed a fixation on John John, and Jackie dumped Michael instantly. The book also includes anecdotes about Princess Diana and the friendship she shared with Michael, which ended abruptly when Michael made too obvious an attempt to try to befriend Prince William and make him a playmate at Neverland for a summer. And it was very interesting, the sort of exchange of dialogue and letters that then happened between Michael's camp and Buckingham Palace, and this kind of horrible protocol which ultimately involved dumping a friend. And there's, of course, a series of stories about Michael's complicated and often murky relationships with an army of handlers and publicists and lawyers and bodyguards. And then there were those trials, always with the nasty, lingering issue of whether Michael Jackson was really a pedophile. Was he indeed, they asked, a monstrous freak, or perhaps merely an innocent victim of his own wealth and fame? And then there was the fact that Michael spent millions of dollars hushing up alleged intimacies with underage boys, only some of whose names were ever known to the general public. This book goes a long way toward answering those questions about Michael Jackson. In closing, I want to pay tribute to the soul of departed Michael, and wish to thank him and memorialize him for his music, which has contributed enormously to our lives. Thank you, Michael, and God bless you. Thank you for taking a look at this book.